All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the Million Dollar Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with my friend Rudy Rodriguez. Rudy, welcome. I am so excited to have you here and so excited to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm excited to be here with you as well. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, and we are relatively new friends. You and I both happened to be in Austin last week. We were invited to a small gathering of entrepreneurs by some friends of ours, Tim Francis, and Tim was the one that invited me to that event, and it was at his place in Austin, and there was 8 of us that were invited to that event. And what is so great about being in an environment like that, where it's kind of a curated environment where there's a host that you just trust, and I don't know what conversation he had with you, Rudy, but I know with me, he was like, Kevin, I'm really excited to have you come for this dinner and have you experience, because I know the kind of person you are, and I know the kind of person that I invite to these things. And what I will tell you is you're going to make some great new friends, and who knows, maybe business will come from it as well. And so that's where you and I met, and we just hit it off really well. And I was like, man, Rudy, I would love to interview you for the Million Dollar Relationships Podcast. And here we are. And so what I'd like to do is I was really fascinated by when I was asking you about what you did and all that kind of stuff when we were in Austin together. And what I'd like to do is kind of start by turning it over to you, give you the opportunity to share a little bit about what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you do, that kind of thing, just so we can set a little bit of context and let everybody know who is Rudy and what's Rudy all about.
Thank you, Kevin. And before I talk about myself reluctantly, I want to highlight something I appreciate about you when I met you. One, I appreciate your shirt. You had this really cool airplane patterned kind of a Hawaiian t-shirt. And that's the thing that stood out about me. It's like, oh, this guy's pretty cool. He's chill. And maybe he likes airplanes. And then I got to know you, and I discovered that you were a veteran as well as a professional fisherman for 7 years, and you had 7 kids. I was like, so cool. And you're just such a laid back, very approachable human being. And as I got to know you, just to discover, the depth of your background and the relationships that you built over the years, and just, really appreciate connecting with you and the opportunity to be here with you and your audience today. So Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
And from a relationship perspective, I too was a veteran, served in the Navy, U.S. Naval Academy graduate, and then 6 years as a pilot. So that's why I like your shirt, because I liked airplanes. And I really enjoyed that life of service to country. And around 2014, I actually met a mentor through a mastermind program that I joined. And through that decision and through that mentorship, I ended up changing careers from the Navy to pursuing my entrepreneurial dreams, and worked with that mentor very closely for a few years and helped them scale their company to multiple 7 figures, with majority of that coming from the efforts that I put in. And I discovered, hey, I have a skill here. And so what does this mean? What's the benefit to your listeners? Is what am I up to? What do I do? I helped that mentor create a coaching program for its customer base. And I think one of the things that I love most is helping other people get the mentor, get the coach, get the guidance, the education that they need to succeed in their lives and in their businesses. And in today's interview, what I'm going to share with the audience is kind of my own journey of the mentors that I've had over the years that have helped me grow personally and professionally, and some of the lessons I've taken away from those mentors and highlighting and celebrating them. But to answer your question, what do I do specifically? What I do specifically is I run a company called Wingman. And we provide done for you back of the room sales teams type solutions. But we only work with clients that provide very reputable coaching, education, mastermind, mentorship type programs that I know with absolute certainty make a meaningful difference in people's lives. So basically we do partnerships, much like yourself, Kevin, I believe, with your experience. So I'm going to put a pin in it there, and I'm going to let you ask me whatever questions you want to ask me.
Yeah, yeah. So I really like the idea, what you just said of doing partnerships. And of course, I have been doing strategic partnerships for years, and it has been such a rewarding experience doing that over the years as well. So I can only imagine what it's been like for you. So what does a partnership look like in your world, Rudy?
That's a great question. It's a big open-ended question. What
Yes.
is partnership? I actually ask myself that question quite frequently in different aspects of my life. What is partnership? And for me, it's a bit philosophical, but I'll give,
Mhm.
I think you're referring to business. What does business partnership look like? So it's not equity partnership.
Yep.
In that sense, it's more, like I was mentioned previously, I work with companies and brands that have proven education programs in the form of coaching, mastermind, um, mentorship type offerings, and I bring in an entire sales function to help scale those programs, assuming the programs are high end, like $10,000 or higher.
Okay.
What we do, we're very good at what we do, and we work with a very select clientele. So everything we do is primarily by referral based. Like I said, we only work with very reputable brands that make meaningful difference in people's lives.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, that I know in my world, it's the same kind of thing. And what I found is that, yeah, I facilitate $1 million relationships and connections regularly, but in order to do that, I can only do that with the right people. And I think there's two things, at least for me, the two things that come up is for me is that I got to have trust in someone's character and in their competence. They've got to be just really world class at what they do. And if those two things are in place, man, I'll tell you, that creates kind of a zero friction environment where conversations can be had, discoveries can be made, and then from there, results happen very quickly. And whereas if there's not that trust, if there's hesitancy around that, you know what, that's when that just slogs everything down and can just make it come to a complete stop if there's not trust involved. And so that is a very, very big thing. And so I really appreciate you touching on that as well. So what I want to do is I'm going to shift gears, because I know I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. So have you ever been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for these person or persons? And Rudy, I am just really excited to give you the opportunity to share and honor some people that have had such a profound impact on your life and your business, because my goal is in anybody listening to this is just going to be inspired to create more real and meaningful relationships in their own life.
Thank you, Kevin, for that question. I have quite the list of people who made that difference in my life, and I'm sure everyone does. I want to give first and foremost credit to the first person I can think of, which is my parents, right? And my mother immigrated from a foreign country to come to the United States and took that risk so that we could have a different opportunity here growing up, so I could. And my father's been a very hard worker over the years, and it's demonstrated to me what work ethic looks like. And I think that's the greatest gift I could have ever received. Because that's something that cannot be taught per se. You can't teach somebody hunger and work ethic, right?
That's right.
So I give first and foremost appreciation to my parents. I say this a little jokingly, but to point to the fact that we've all had, grade school teachers that believed in us. I remember my third grade teacher, her name was Miss Junis, and I remember it was first award that I received in grade school was a little math award, and I forget what it says, but essentially I got an award and acknowledgement from a third grade teacher that really, helped me believe in myself and my abilities. And I began to believe that I was good at math, and I went on to do well in school and well in mathematics specifically. And I went on to get an engineering degree from the United States Naval Academy. And I think it fundamentally began with a third grade teacher who patted me on the back, gave me an award and said, "Hey, you're good at math."
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. Wow.
Um, yeah, you know, many teachers along the way. I mean, there are a few that really stand out as exceptional. Um, you know, I remember a specific high school counselor by the name of Pablo Alvarez, who, you know, when told him my goal of wanting to go to Naval Academy, he's actually believed me and actually talked to me about creating a plan to go there and to go that direction. I didn't, you know, necessarily know how I was going to do it. And then I had another fellow in high school. He was actually a lieutenant commander in the NJROTC program. His name was Lieutenant Commander Paul McNabb, and he was a mentor to me as well and helped guide the way. So many hands along the way, you know, that made that possible.
Yeah.
And I'm only touching the surface here on my gratitude to them. But there's one gentleman in specifically that I recall from that portion of my life. His name is Vernon Lavia. I met him when I was about 18 years old, and his wife at the time was a state representative of the state of
Okay.
Illinois, and she assisted me in the nomination process to get a congressional nomination to the United States Naval Academy. So I had a lot of help along the way, and the thing that I noticed about Vernon when I met him is, you know, at the time I was 18 and he was in his early 40s, and I noticed he was different than many other people that I had met up to that point in my life. Mind you, I didn't grow up with entrepreneurs around me. You know, I had a great childhood. No, I'm not complaining about that, but I didn't grow up with that role model per se, that example of what's possible. And as I got to know Vernon, I discovered that there are many things that he had done in his life already up to that point that for me were dreams. There were things I dreamt about. Becoming a Navy pilot. He had gone to Navy flight school, though he didn't graduate due to medical discharge. He had gone that far. You know, he did Duke ROTC. He had been a very successful corporate executive, Fortune 5 company, as well as an entrepreneur, having started 18 businesses and sold 16 of them profitably. And I was just curious. I just got really curious about him and asked a lot of questions. And eventually he agreed to mentor me. And he told me there's three things that he did in his life that he felt made the difference that allowed him to create, you know, this life of time freedom, financial freedom. By the way, I didn't mention that he also had created multiple charities, and he was a stay-at-home dad who had two daughters, and he took 90 days vacation every year, and he never missed an important event in his daughter's life. So not only was he, you know, worldly successful, but he also was able to be there with his family. He was happily married, and you know, he was a very holistic image or model for me. And he said, "There's three things that to do, right?" And he said, one, get grounded in principle-based thinking, right? He didn't tell me specifically it had to be a specific religion or a specific faith or anything of that sort, but he said, get grounded in something that's bigger than you, that impacts your beliefs and how you act and be. And that was one of the things he did. And, you know, he and I later went on to do a weekly meeting around this. We did a weekly Bible study for me. That was my journey at the time, where we read the New Testament, specifically the Sermon on the Mount, and discussed how we saw that showing up in our lives. Number two, he said, read the E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. He said that was the principles that he used to grow his businesses profitably and sell them. And three, he said, do the Landmark Forum. It's a 3.5-day seminar. And he said he and his wife built their whole life around, you know, what they learned in the forum. And so those are the three words of advice that he gave me at, you know, early age of life. And that was the path that I took at that point. And I can say, looking back now, that, you know, that interaction and that guidance and mentorship probably has had not only a profound difference in my life, but has impacted indirectly thousands of people along the way because of what I've been able to do and the message that I've been able to share as a result of that mentor, right? That person that believed in me when I was young and green behind the years. So much appreciation to Vern Lavia and his wife, Linda Chapa Lavia, and the time and the care and the love that they invested in me at that time in my life. So very
Yeah.
grateful for that.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So now I'm really curious. So with Vernon, um, if you look at this, if we look at this one, and I'm also, I'm also just fact, because I'm thinking about your third grade teacher too. And like just the impact that had on you, just her giving you this math award that just then gave you all this confidence and all that came from that, and getting an engineering degree, and it all stemmed like, and she probably, well, I'm curious, have you had any contact with her? And how many years ago was that when you were in third grade?
I don't even remember, to be honest with you, probably 30 years ago, near
Okay.
that.
And have
Yeah.
you had any contact with her since then? Nope.
No,
Nope.
no.
Nope. And so she has no idea, but yet that's probably, I mean, it sounds to me like a really pivotal moment in your life that just really led to some stuff that she has not a clue about. But yet I'm looking at this going, wow, how many, and like I don't know that we're going to know an answer to this, but I like looking at this stuff when it comes to relationships, because we never know the true impact of just doing what we do. And like that teacher giving you that math award and what's come from that since, and the impact that you have had on who knows how many lives through the work that you do, through serving the clients that you do, and how many lives have been impacted, that there was a piece of that all goes back to that award that she gave you in third grade. And then you also, mentioning Vernon. And so I want to dig into that piece just a little bit, because I just love doing this. If you look at your relationship with Vernon and the mentoring that he offered you, what is one thing that came from that was like a big thing, a big impact kind of thing, that you also know would have never ever happened had you not met Vernon and not had that relationship with Vernon?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if I can answer that definitively, in that, there could all sorts of different things that could have happened
Mhm.
if I had not met Vernon. I don't know what would have happened. But the thing that I do appreciate about Vernon, and I think that happened sooner than later, but I do think maybe some of these many things are inevitable because I had that vision in my mind.
Mhm.
Definitely having done those three things that I mentioned to you at an early age, in my early 20s, having started focusing on principle-based thought, having and getting grounded in my faith, having studied and mastered the principles of the EMIT to the point where I could teach it, having done the Landmark Forum and the curriculum for living, and apply that to my life and all of the choices that have come, since that point. It's a ripple effect. So I'm sure all these things would have happened eventually, maybe just not as soon and as concise, right? So having that model definitely made the difference for me.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation and to share about some of the people who have had such an impact in your life. Um, for anybody listening to this going, man, Kevin, I really like Rudy. I like what Rudy stands for. How can they find out more about you, the work you're doing, whatever you feel led that might be right to share with anybody who's listening to this?
Yeah, it's a great question, Kevin. We do have a website. It's wingmancoachingllc.com. It's a bit long, so you might include that in the show notes.
Yep. Yep.
Our DBA for people, for virtual event leaders. So event leaders are the people I normally speak with. We have a website called virtualeventsalesteam.com. But quite honestly, if you're listening to this, just connect with Kevin or connect with me directly. Just find a way to connect with us directly, and I'm sure Kevin can direct you to me, or vice versa. if it really
Absolutely.
resonates with you. What I do is not for most people.
Yep.
It is only for people who are really committed to making a significant, meaningful difference in people's lives and have already proven that they can. And they're looking to partner with someone who can bring the staff and the leadership to scale their high-end programs. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, I really appreciate that. And so I hold on here. I'm just gonna write this down before I okay. So for anybody listening to this, that because you're somebody who really values relationships as well and stuff. And what would you say is just one or two? You talk about just the way you view things and stuff, and just those core beliefs and stuff. What are one or two of your core beliefs around relationships and how we treat people or how you treat people that are really important to you in your life, and how and this I don't know what comes up for you in that regard.
It's interesting you should ask that because I have done some significant work around my own values and core values, and their relationships consistently are within number one or number three, so top three of my core values, depending on the season of my life and what I'm up to. And so this is something I think about often. The principle to share is it's very universal. It's said in many different ways in many different contexts and scriptures and all sorts of things. It says, treat others the way you'd want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty simple in that context, right?
Yep.
And as far as business relationship goes, I'm a big believer in this idea of partnership, right? Creating win-win-wins.
Yeah.
We're not working together, right? It's for me, it's not about the win-lose or like get a sale or get someone. It's like, no, doing work that's meaningful. I think the money follows the meaningful value, the meaningful work that we do together. That's my perspective. And lots of money follows, but I don't focus on the money. I focus on the service and making a meaningful difference in people's lives.
Absolutely. Yeah, you and I are in complete alignment on that. And that's who I love serving as well, is people who, they've got past this place in their business where their motivation is around just growth or scaling or any of that kind of stuff. Their motivation is around, I want to make a bigger impact. And revenue is the byproduct of that. So it's kind of like, piggybacks right on what you were saying. And those are the people that are most inspiring to work with that it's all focused on impact and how can I make a bigger impact through using my business, which also translates to their gifts, their unique abilities, whatever you want to call that, and making a bigger impact in the world. And so really appreciate you sharing that, Rudy. Any last thing that you want to share that you feel is important to share before we call it a wrap?
One quick note I want to mention on the topic of I'll use the word sales,
Okay.
influence, leadership, enrollment, right? Some of these words are synonymous with one another or interchangeable. Fundamentally, my belief is that nothing in this world happens until someone makes a committed decision, right? And some people call themselves, I think of it as leadership, quite honestly. But that also begins with building relationship, with building trust, with adding value, right? If we focus more, 40%, imagine if we were to focus 40% of our time in adding value and building trust and credibility. You mentioned those two things, right? Credibility, as well as competency.
Yeah.
Right. If we could build the credibility and demonstrate the competency with more people that we do business with, we don't have to worry about the back end stuff of objection handling so much, and all the back end stuff, which is important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not discrediting the importance of enrollment processes. But if we were to focus more on, hey, how do I make a meaningful difference in the life of the person that's in front of me, and how do I build trust and credibility and demonstrate my competency in a way that makes a difference for them, then the business follows. So I'll put a pin in that.
Yeah,
The concept is enrolled, not sold. If I were to put a tagline on.
I love that. I love that. You're right. Yeah, enrolled, not sold. I'm going to write that down. That's good. That's really good. Because yeah, you're right. It really is about, helping those that we can best help by bringing our unique gifts and talents and abilities to the table to be able to serve the right kind of people that are in alignment with who we are, with our core values, with the way that we want to show up, all of that kind of stuff. And when we are working and serving those that we're in alignment with, man, I'll tell you, it's not only is it incredibly rewarding, it is just so easy. I mean, I have this thing I've often said is that, I would not work or want to serve anybody that I wouldn't invite into my home for dinner with my family and I. And in fact, lots of the people that I do serve, they have been in my home. And that's just a really good litmus test for me, because if I don't feel that way about somebody, why would I want to do business with them? And so yeah, you and I are just definitely on the same wavelength when it comes to how we view relationships and how we view people. And it's just, it's incredibly rewarding doing business that way. And so, Rudy, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation here today. Really appreciate it and really appreciate you, man.